If you want to place a page number on the page, we give you a page number drawable. So inside of the toolbox in the drawable section, you'll see page number. And when you place a page number out, it prints a page number. The page numbers are going to start with 1, and for every page of the ancestor page, it's going to increase that number by 1. We do give you an offset field, so if you want to start it on page 2 or page 5 or whatever number you want to start at, you can do that. From the format, we allow the Arabic or the Roman numerals. When you give the name, you're giving the name of the ancestor mini page that's being used to determine the page number. So you're identifying what page is the page that when it restarts, it gets the page number again. So if I want to have a page number restart every time a report trigger is hit, I need to have a mini page under that report trigger, and it's that mini page that I reference in the page number's name property. The other drawable I want to talk about was the image box drawable. So inside of that same toolbox, under the drawable section, we have an image box. And it's equivalent to the image in a form. But when I place that image box on the page, the things that I want to specify, the location, what's the file name of the source image, and you can navigate the directory folder to identify that. We have the checkbox for tile. Do you want us to print the image multiple times in the space available, or do you want us to scale the image to fit? And then we have the intended resolution. If you want to put the dots per inch, it's used to size the image when the X size or the Y size is not defined. If the X size or the Y size is defined and tile is not checked, then the image will be scaled in one or both directions. Let me stop and give you a quick little demonstration on working with both image box and page number. Let me start by adding an image to our first page header. If I select first page header, and in my toolbox, I go to my drawables and I double click on image box. You can see that it adds it as the last item inside of that first page header. I'm going to go ahead and move it and drop it into the first layout stripe. So in my stripe layouter 3-1, I'm going to have the image there first. Now under this image, you see that there's the image section. So location, I can go out there and I can find an image that I want to use. There I have a thumbs up. Let me change the resolution. If you change it, you can see the resolution size differing. I'm going to change it to 360. That just gives you a different size that you can look at. Otherwise, I could also set X size and Y size, etc. I'm not going to tile it. I just want the image to appear once. But now I've placed an image inside of that header. What if I also wanted to add a page number? I'm going to put the page number in my footer. Let me find my footer. I found my footer. Typically inside of this horizontal box, I'm going to place first a stripe. So I place in my stripe. Inside of the stripe is typically where I would drop any sort of report object, so I'm moving my word box there. I want to go ahead and I want to then add a page number. I'm going to use Control, drag, and place it next to the page footer here, but then I'm going to move these two around. So right now I have, in fact, I will remove the page footer here. Once I have my page number out here, what you can see is when we go down to my page number area, I have to give the name of the mini page. If I chose it to be mini page 12, every time it redid the stripe, it would restart at 1. I want it to count each page along, so I'm going to let that be page root. My offset, if I want it to start at 1, 2, 3, I'm going to start it at 1. And then I can have Arabic, lower Roman numerals, or upper Roman numerals. Let me just choose lower Roman numerals. Let me just go ahead and save this report. Let's go ahead and execute. Now, because of how we set it up, we can see our image appearing on our first page header. Our header already had a page number on it. That page number was 1. But if I scroll down, my Roman number is equal to 2. So as far as my offset, if I wanted to start with page 1, I need the offset to be 0, so it can add 1 to that and print it out on that page. Let's go ahead and change that back then to 0. We'll save it. We'll execute it once again. This time when I run it, I have my 1 in Roman numeral lowercase 1 because I started with the offset of 0. Now that if I go, I can see on my second page, I don't have that image. And why don't I have that image? It's because for my first page header, I set this section to be first page header. That's why this appears. If it's not the first page, it's going to go to my page header, where the section is set to any page header, and that does not have an image. The next two items I want to talk about are the references. We have a reference box and an info node. And the references, it's a tag team working combination. You can use an info node to store a value for later use by a reference box. And then you can use the reference box to display the value from an info node. So why are these important? Well, one example I can give you, and it's an example that we do in the lab exercise, is when you're dealing with something like a store total or a report total, when you go and read the next data row in, it's going to be the current values. So by the time I move to the next page, I have the current values of the row. I no longer have the old item number. I no longer have the old item total. I no longer have the old report total. We're streaming the data, but sometimes you need to know, or you want to know, what existed in the previous row streamed across that is not existent in the current row streamed across. And that's where we can use an info node. You can attach the info node so that it's saving a value, and it saves it until that info node gets written over again. Then you use the reference box to display that info node. So the example that we have up here, if I want to save the report total from the previous page to perhaps use in the header of the next page, and that's what we show in our lab, I can take the report total. I need to format it out as a string, so I format it and I provide the string formatting that I want to apply. And I would place this on the table row so that it's being saved when that table row is being put across. My next thing then is when I get to define my header on the next page, I place out there my report total reference box. In this report total reference box, I need to specify what info node is displaying. The name I enter here in the info node name is going to match the name that I provided for the info node. Now, due to streaming, this concept is only going to work in one direction. You're going to be able to save the value of the previous values that had been sent across, but only that first iteration of previous values. To show you how to use the info nodes in the reference box, I've gone ahead and I've just made sure my report was organized like I wanted it. So right now we have our page root. It's got its page header, first page header, and a page footer. We then have our table row being printed out on every row. And when an order number changes, we have an order total stripe printed. When the store number changes, we have a store total stripe printed. Now, my goal for this demonstration is to have inside of the header of all pages except for the first page, I want to print what the store number was on the previous page. Right now in our store total stripe, we have the X size equal to rest, which means when it's printed, every time the store number changes, we're going to get a new page. But on that new page, what I want to do is I want to reference the old store number from the previous page so that I can put information about saying, previous page's store number was, and give a value. So how do I do this? Well, the first thing that happens, let's go ahead and execute this report just so that we can see what it looks like. So when we execute the report, what you're seeing is we know that it's breaking on store number, but we don't know what store number it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is modify this report to add some store number information. So inside of Genero Studio, what I want to do is I want underneath the group of store number, I want to go ahead and I want to add a new stripe. So I add a stripe mini page. I'm going to go ahead and move that above the order number trigger, but below the group store number, and I'm going to rename this current store number stripe. And inside of this current store number stripe, I'm going to put a word box. This word box is just going to be my label. So I can go down to the text attribute and say current store number is :space. And now on the end of that, I want to identify what that current store number is. So I can go and find my customer.storenum and add it to that stripe. Let's go ahead and save these first changes. When we re-execute the report, now we can see that it's telling me what the current store number is on each page. So let me go to the next page. Current store number is 102. Next page, current store number is 103, and so on. And now I want to go ahead and put in the header of all the pages subsequent to the first page header what the store number was of the page preceding it. And so how I do that, this is where the InfoNode comes into handy. By the time I get to that next page, I already know the store number is 102. I've forgotten that the previous page was 101. How do I remember that? Well, I go to my table row, and on my table row, I go and I add an InfoNode. Let me go and highlight that InfoNode. I need to now give it some sort of name, and I'm going to call this previous row store number. And then under the value, I have to specify what it's going to populate this InfoNode or this variable with. I'm going to open my expression editor, and I know it's going to be data.customer.storenum. You'll notice it says the expression is still incomplete, and that's because it needs a string, so I need to format it as some type of string. Once I've done that, my expression is okay. And now I have the InfoNode. Now on the next page, on the page header, what I need to do is add something that displays this information. So for my sake, and this is just to quickly do it in the demo, let me go to my page header. I'm going to put on a stripe. I'm going to move it to the top just so we easily see it within that page header, and I'm going to rename it to be previous page store number stripe. And then inside of this previous page store number stripe, I'm going to put a word box as a label, and I know I'm going to put a reference box to display that InfoNode. So under my word box label, let me just quickly change the text to say previous page store number, give a colon and a space, and then under my reference box, here's where I need to do a few things. First, let me go down to the reference section. Under the info name, what data am I displaying? I'm displaying that previous row store number. And then under the default, what do I want to display if there is no value in that info node? I'm just going to put n/a, not applicable. The last thing I'm going to have to do, and if I go and look at my document error section, it says either my X size or the text property have to be specified. I'm just going to go ahead and specify my text property or my X size to be min. So take up the minimum amount of space that you need to use. Specify that. I can see the X size value has gone. Whoops, let me save my changes and let me execute the report. And now the first page header doesn't change. That's what we expected. We know the store is 101. But when I go to the next page, you can see the previous store number was 101. It used that info node to save the value from the previous row. And now on this next page, I can use it to put this information in the header. But my current store number is 102. If I go one more page, I expect the previous store to be 102 and the current store number to be 103, all the way up to the final page of the report where I had the previous page of 305 and the current number of 306.